Hi guys, welcome to Delaware Studios. This is another episode of Kotlin Android development. In the last tutorial, we talked about the recycler view, the basic recycler view, how to set up the view order and how to bind data to a text view. In which we will be enhancing that. We have to create a standard view order when we're going to inflate an item list and probably create an on-click listener to it. To get that person finished. But before we do that, let's talk about basic data types, variables, and properties in Kotlin. Everything is an object, as you all know. There are no primitive types as the ones we know in Java. But this is helpful because we're going to have a uniform way to deal with all these available types. There are no automatic conversions among numeric types. For instance, you cannot assign an int to a double. You all know that. An explicit conversion must be done using one of the many functions we have available. So let's try to declare an int. We'll just do that in the onCreate of the main activity based on what we have earlier. Declare a var I. We're going to point this to return an integer in Kotlin on question mark. So what's it going to be? Return an integer, so it's going to be return an integer of 7. So you could see we have an integer here. Now we could also have a double of var d. Let's going to return double. And now let's try to convert an integer to the double, just like the way we have the .parse int, integer.parse, or when you're trying to convert to int, when you're trying to convert to double, .parse, when you parse a string or an integer value to double. Now for you to do that, you're just going to write I just to double. With that, you're going to convert that integer value 7 to double, which is going to be for the value d. So let's look at some other data type. Characters cannot directly be used as members. We can, however, convert them to a member when we need it. Let's look at characters. When we talk about character sequence, we have var. Let's call this e, and we're going to actually give it a character, return character, and it's going to be what character we'll look at. Let's look at e as well. So it's returning e, now a character, initializing that. Now let's get to create another value. This time I. It returns integer. So we're going to try to convert the character, or I have the same I here. Let's call it J. Let's try to convert the same character to character to an integer. So what you're going to do is just write e dot int or e to int. You have it specified that way. You convert it to an integer. So we have all this conversion done, just like the way we have in Java, but now in a shorthand form. Literals can give information about its type. It is not a requirement, but a common practice in Kotlin is to omit variable types. We're going to actually give you a clue, and the compiler is going to let you infer from the literals. For example, let's get to look at integer. So when you're declaring an integer, you don't really need to declare it as a data type int. The compiler will understand that you're actually declaring an integer based on the values you're giving it. For example, 12. It's what is an integer because we have I already. Let's call it O. It specifies as an integer, but in Java this is going to be an error because you didn't specify its data type. Let's get to look at another one. Value x, which is equals to 0x 0f. So what's this? This is an int from the hexadecimal literal. As you can see, let's look at long. Let's call value L equals to 3. Oh, this is a long. You don't need to specify the long data type. For double, let's look at that. Oh, G. Let's give it 3.5. It's going to actually depict the double. And for float, let's call it value F equals to 3.5 F. That's a float data type. So all working cool. And a string can be accessed as an array and can also be iterated. So let's get to look at that. When you're talking about string, we have a string called value bami equals to example. That's a string. Now we could actually refer to the first index of that character, or by saying val c equals bami. Let's refer to the first index 0. That means it's going to be what? E. When you run that, it's going to be E, because an array starts from 0. So that's how it works. Let's get to loop through the character. You could do a for loop for, or you could say P in bami, and what's going to return? You print out each one of the print P. So you're going to print out each one of the characters in examples. It's going to print EXAMPLE, just that way. Now let's look at variables. Variables in Kotlin can be easily defined as mutable, which is var, or immutable, val. The idea is very similar to using the definer in Java variables. However, immutability is a fundamental concept in Kotlin and many other modern languages like Swift. And an immutable object is an object whose state cannot change after instantiation. If you need a modified version, you could create a new object. Immutability makes software more robust and predictable. In Java, most objects are mutable, which means that any part of the code which has access to it can modify it, affecting the rest of the application. Immutable objects are also thread safe by definition. As the value is constant, you do not need to implement any particular synchronized mechanism because all thread always gets the same object. Let's get to look at the immutability of what we're talking about. Let me get to clear this, just for space. Now I'm going to declare another value s, which is equals to example. Now what we're going to do today, this is a string, and we're going to have an integer val I, which equals to 23. That's an int. So an action bar, we could declare an action bar too, to become an activity context. But a type needs to be specified if you want to use a more generic type. For example, let's declare any, and call it 23. You got it? You can also declare context as well. When you declare public value C, it's a context, which is the activity. So you could see the immutability in variable declaring val and var. Now properties. Properties are the equivalent of fields in Java, but which it has much power than Java. Properties do the work of a field plus a getter or a setter, which you all know. We've done something of that nature in the first tutorial where we did a getter and setter. We could still do that. In Java, you have something of this way. When we declare person, which is the Java class, we'll have a private string, private string name. Now we'll add a set and getter for this. So you have things like this in Java, and you could make reference to that in the main activity when you call person. We just do a reference like this: person equals to new person. Or you're going to need a companion object, probably because you're actually right there in a Kotlin function. But if you're in a Java function, you're just going to write person, and what you're going to do, you're going to have that running, like having something of this nature: person equals to new person. Cool. And from there, you could make reference to person by calling person dot, you get it, dot name. With that, you're going to make reference to the string value called name, and you could actually manipulate it or set it or do something, or reference dot set name, which you could actually set the name or do something to it. So that's that for that. Let me try to probably get this inside here. Cut it out. It's going to actually work inside here. Okay, person.set name. Now we'll make reference to set name. We'll make reference to set name over here and passing its parameter. So that's just how to initialize fields and make it work and manipulate it in Java. But when it comes to Kotlin, you only need few lines of implementation. So let's get to look at this person in Kotlin. So I might call it persons. Okay. Now it's going to be a class of persons, and I'm going to give it the body of var, so that you could manipulate it, you could change it. String equals to empty. That's an empty string of name. Now let's get to set a value to it. You could just go to your main activity over here, or right inside the create method. I could make reference to that called val person. Get it? Which is going to point at person. That's all. So now you could use the object of person to set the name. You don't need to call set name. As you all know, just point it at name. Since you have it as a setter and getter, it's going to actually make that work. Now you could now fill the empty field with a valid name. You get it? Now you could still say var name is equals to person dot name, like speeding it out. That's all. You could use to fetch, which is get. You could also use to set, which is the setter that we are all known for. Now you could also probably do some modification like send to lowercase or set value, which is just part of the additional features you have. If the property needs to access its value in a custom getter or setter, as in this case you saw, it requires the creation of a backing field. It can be accessed by using the field keyword, a reserved word that is automatically created when the compiler finds that it is required. You need to take into account that if you use the property directly, you we would be using the setter and the getter and not doing a direct assignment. You can only use the backing field inside the accessors of the property. So we're going to be stopping here when it comes to variables, functions, and we talk about our properties and basic data types, how to initialize them. And in the next video, we'll be looking at retrieving data from the API. Let's retrieve real life data from the API, which is for the weather API, and we're going to actually gracefully display that in the recycler view. After that, we'll be looking at creating a complete recycler view item layout, and also create an on-click listener to each of the rows, so you could actually get intent triggered to the detail activity. All this will be covering in the Kotlin Android series, and even we'll be jiving up. We'll be looking at the movies app. How can we port movies app? How can we write movies app in Kotlin? We'll also be covering that as well. Thank you very much for hanging out with me, and don't forget to strike on the like button and subscribe to Delare Studios. Bye bye for now.